Okay, so basically this type of analysis were introduced for the first time during the 60s, 70s by the New Archaeology. And nowadays, they are a basic element to study the funerary record. But it has a little methodological problem when it comes about analyzing collective and multiple graves, since the unit of study is the individual, a single individual. So sometimes when we find grave goods, we cannot really tell which grave good belongs to any individual. So in this case, in my research, what I do is to apply two different statistical strategies to include these multiple and collective grave to the study of the sex gender roles during the Neolithic. Okay, this is the study case I'll be studying. This is the northeast part of the Iberian Peninsula in Spain. And as you can see, I have a total of 57 sites and a total of 441 individuals. But the distribution in the time of these individuals it's very unequal. As you can see in the final Neolithic, there are only 3 individuals. So in my study, I will only be focusing in the ancient and middle Neolithic. The methodology I used is quite simple. I collected data with a very strict criteria, since I wanted my results to be reliable. And I created a database intended to apply to main groups of statistical analysis. The ones with qualitative data and aim to study the mortuary practices, like the burial characteristics. And the other one aimed to study the grave good distribution on the individuals. So to study this grave goods distribution, I used 2 different methodologies to include these multiple and collective graves, one based in the presence and absence of certain individuals, and the other one based on the percentage of the presence of these individuals. Okay? So before starting, what I did was to apply a factual analysis of correspondence. As you can see here, all the individuals are focused in a very small point, meaning that they don't show a lot of differences between them. There's not a lot of variety between them. And only 6 of the 12 original variables I used show a strong relationship with these individuals. So these are the only ones that I'll be using, being the sex and age, the dependent variables, and the rest, the independent ones. Okay, as you can see here, all these variables will be studied differently in the ancient Neolithic and in the middle Neolithic. And before that, it's important to understand the demography of these groups. And also, I think it's very relevant here that male adults here are always the bigger group in the 2 periods. Okay. When applying a chi-square test in these 4 independent variables, we see that in all of the cases, at least in the ancient Neolithic, the tests fail. So we cannot argue that there's any type of difference between different demographic groups during this period. But what we can actually see is that there are few tendencies that maybe in some cases they are not because of social behavior, but because of taphonomical processes. And these things, this dynamic continues during the middle Neolithic. When we apply the chi-square test, we see that these tests fail again, except for the case of the body gesture, the posture of these skeletal remains, because as we can see here, children show a higher ratio of not being in anatomical connection. But again, this is due because of taphonomical reasons and not social behavior. And even though these tests failed, and we cannot argue that there's an actual difference or inequality between these individuals, we can still see that all of them show different characteristics. Okay, but what I really wanted to talk to you about today is about the grave good distribution. Okay, and I applied these two methodologies I told you before in the ancient Neolithic, and only because of the low ratio of apparition of these good graves in the ancient Neolithic, I could only apply the first methodology I proposed based on the presence and absence of certain individuals here. And the thing is that this methodology worked pretty well. The characteristics we have in no male group show results very similar to the female group, and vice versa, right? And in the Middle Neolithic, because of the high presence of grave goods in all kinds of burials, and we could apply the two methodologies. And again, they worked pretty well as we expected. Okay, so to understand better these results, because with these contingency tables, it's very difficult to explain what I would like to explain. I made these graphics so we can see better how these grave goods are distributed in the population, okay? In the first case, in the ancient Neolithic, okay, we have, sorry, I don't know why the animations, okay, the animations are working now. Males show a higher ratio of arrowheads and polished lithic tools. Meanwhile, women show a higher ratio of pottery, lithic tools, and ornaments. In the case of animals, animal offerings in the graves, all type of adults, male or female, show the same ratio of apparition. But in the case of bone tools, they are mostly found in children graves. Okay, so when applying the chi-square test in this contingency table in the ancient Neolithic, we see that all these good graves fail the test, except for one only case, which is the domestic animals. But when we get into the data and see why is this test not failing in this case, we can see that this data is not significant. We only have two graves, which are mixed graves with female and male individuals who have these elements in the grave goods. So I wouldn't say this is significant, okay? But this dynamic changes completely when analyzing the Middle Neolithic. As we can see, males show a higher ratio of wild animals, lithic arrowheads, and polished lithic tools. And in this period, women are never the main group of appearance of any of these items. But we can still see that pottery, domestic animals, bone tools, and ornaments appear with the same ratio in female and male graves. Finally, when we apply the chi-square test in this contingency table, we see that 4 of these elements show a very high significant levels of statistical significance, especially in these two cases, which are the apparition of wild animals and arrowheads in male graves, which is something that we have related with the hunting activities, which is something that we also see in the funerary record of the Middle Neolithic in France, in the Paris Basin, and also in Germany, in the LBK communities. Also, this is it's very common in the cave art of this period, in the schematic art of the Iberian Peninsula, in the Mediterranean arc, to see a lot of scenes of men hunting and with these interpersonal violence activities. So we cannot only have to relate these statistical results with the hunting activities, but with the interpersonal violence. Okay, so if we put all the data together, what we can see is that there's a kind of a evolution or change between the ancient Neolithic and the Middle Neolithic, between these two, because in the ancient Neolithic, we cannot argue any type of difference between any type of demographic group. But in the Middle Neolithic, we start to see how male individuals have start to become different from the rest, with this male identity consolidation through the hunting activities. And at the end, in the final Neolithic, we don't know what happened because we don't have any type of reliable data. Again, we have to be very careful with the inferences we make with this data, since this is funerary record. This is not an innocent record. It has been intentionally created, and we don't know what these materials represented for the past societies. And the conclusions are that the two different methodological approaches to study these collective and multiple burials showed great results, and these results support all the previous evidence made by other researchers and based only on individual graves. Also, I would like to note that we really need to start using more new and inclusive statistical variables, and we need, of course, a lot of anthropologists to study the bone remains to have all this data available. And that's it. Thank you very much.